At 8:47 on the morning of May 23, 1939, submarine USS Squalus sank 240 feet to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of New Hampshire, with 59 men trapped inside. 26 died instantly when the engine room flooded. 33 survived in the forward compartments. They had 48 hours of air. No submarine crew had ever been rescued from depths beyond 100 feet. The Navy had no equipment that could reach them. The men were going to die. Then someone remembered that a stubborn lieutenant commander named Charles Momsen had spent 15 years designing a rescue system that the Navy had rejected as unnecessary. Momsen had built a diving bell that could reach submarines at depths the Navy said were impossible. He had also invented a small rubber breathing device that submariners could use to escape from sunken submarines. The device cost 15 cents to manufacture. It looked like a life vest with a small oxygen canister. The Navy had mocked it. They called it Momsen's toy. They said submariners would never need to escape. Submarines did not sink. Momsen had ignored them. He tested his device obsessively. He made hundreds of practice escapes from submarines at increasing depths. He refined the design. He trained volunteers. By 1939, Momsen's rescue bell and escape device were ready. The Navy had stored them in a warehouse and forgotten about them. When Squalus sank, the Navy had two choices: let 33 men die or admit Momsen had been right and use his equipment. They chose Momsen. For the next 36 hours, Momsen would direct the most daring submarine rescue ever attempted. His diving bell would make 4 trips to the sunken submarine. His escape device would save lives the Navy said could not be saved. All 33 survivors would be rescued. Momsen would be proven right after 15 years of being called crazy. But Squalus was just the beginning. Momsen's 15-cent breathing device would save thousands of submariners in World War II. His rescue techniques would become standard procedure for every navy in the world. The stubborn lieutenant commander, who refused to accept that submarines could not be saved, would change underwater warfare forever. This is his story. Charles Bowers. Momsen was born on June 21, 1896, in Flushing, New York. His family had no naval tradition. His father was a businessman. Charles grew up fascinated by ships and the ocean. He read every book about submarines he could find. Submarines were new technology in the early 1900s. They were dangerous and experimental. Crews called them coffins. If a submarine sank, the crew died. There was no rescue, no escape. You went down with the ship. Charles did not accept that. He believed submarines could be made safer. In 1915, at age 19, Charles enrolled at the United States Naval Academy. He wanted to serve on submarines. His classmates thought he was insane. Submarine duty was the most dangerous assignment in the Navy. Survival rates were low. Charles did not care. He graduated from the Naval Academy in 1919 and immediately volunteered for submarine service. Charles served on multiple submarines during the 1920s. He experienced firsthand how dangerous they were. Equipment failed constantly. Batteries leaked toxic fumes. Hull seals failed. Charles survived several near disasters. In 1925, submarine S-51 sank off Rhode Island after being hit by a steamship. The entire crew of 33 men died. No rescue was attempted. The submarine was too deep. In 1927, submarine S-4 sank off Massachusetts after colliding with a Coast Guard cutter. 40 men were trapped inside. Navy divers could hear the crew tapping SOS signals on the hull for 3 days. But the submarine was 100 feet deep. Divers could not work at that depth long enough to cut through the hull. The men suffocated. Charles Momsen was devastated by S4. The crew had survived the initial sinking. They had air for days, but they died because the Navy had no way to rescue them. Charles decided this would never happen again. He would design a rescue system. Charles began working on two separate problems. First, how to rescue trapped submariners from outside the submarine. Second, how submariners could escape a sunken submarine on their own. For the first problem, Charles designed a diving bell. The bell was a small chamber that could be lowered from a surface ship to a sunken submarine. It would attach to the submarine's escape hatch. Men would climb from the submarine into the bell. The bell would be raised to the surface. Then it would go back down for more men. The concept was simple, but the engineering was complex. The bell had to withstand enormous pressure at depth. It had to seal perfectly to the submarine hatch. It had to be lowered accurately in currents and darkness. Charles spent 2 years designing the bell. He built a prototype in 1929. He tested it in a Navy diving tank. It worked. Charles presented his diving bell to the Navy Bureau of Construction and Repair. They rejected it. They said submarines operating at safe depths did not need rescue equipment. They said the bell was too expensive. They said it was unnecessary. Charles was told to stop working on rescue equipment and focus on his regular duties. Charles ignored them. He continued working on the diving bell in his spare time. He also started working on his second project, an escape device. The idea was that submariners could put on a small breathing apparatus and swim to the surface from a sunken submarine. The Navy said this was impossible. The pressure at depth would kill anyone trying to escape. The rapid ascent would cause the bends. The cold water would cause hypothermia. Charles said the problems were solvable. The human body could withstand pressure if properly prepared. The bends could be avoided with proper breathing technique. Hypothermia could be delayed with proper equipment. Charles designed a simple device, a rubber vest with a small oxygen tank attached. The vest also served as a life preserver. The entire device weighed less than 10 pounds. It could be stored on every submarine. When a sailor needed to escape, he would put on the vest, flood the submarine compartment to equalize pressure, open the hatch, and swim to the surface. The vest would provide oxygen during the ascent and keep him afloat on the surface. Charles built a prototype in 1929. The device cost 15 cents to manufacture, mostly rubber and a small oxygen canister. Charles needed to test it. The Navy refused to authorize tests. They said it was too dangerous. Sailors would die during testing. Charles said sailors were already dying when submarines sank. Testing might kill a few volunteers, but it would save thousands eventually. The Navy disagreed. Charles was ordered to stop working on the escape device. Charles Momsen was now a lieutenant commander with 10 years of submarine experience. He was also insubordinate and obsessed. He kept working on both the diving bell and the escape device despite orders to stop. In 1930, Charles convinced a few submarine commanders to let him conduct unauthorized tests. Charles recruited volunteers from submarine crews. He explained the risks. Escaping from a pressurized submarine underwater had never been attempted. The first tests would be dangerous, possibly fatal. 20 sailors volunteered. Charles conducted the first test in 1930 in a diving tank at the Washington Navy Yard. The tank was 40 feet deep. Charles put on his escape device, entered a small chamber at the bottom of the tank, flooded the chamber, and swam to the surface. The test was successful. Charles was fine. Over the next 2 years, Charles conducted hundreds of tests at increasing depths. He tested at 50 feet, 75 feet, 100 feet, 150 feet. Each test refined the technique. Charles learned that sailors had to exhale continuously during ascent to avoid lung damage from expanding air. He learned the optimal ascent rate. He learned how much oxygen was needed. By 1932, Charles had perfected the escape procedure. He had made over 300 practice escapes. Dozens of volunteers had also made escapes. The technique worked. Charles reported his results to the Navy. He presented detailed data showing that submariners could safely escape from depths up to 200 feet using his device. The Navy was impressed but skeptical. They authorized limited production of the escape device. A few hundred were manufactured and distributed to submarines. But the Navy still did not believe submarines would sink often enough to justify widespread use. Charles also continued working on his diving bell. By 1934, he had a fully functional prototype. He tested it at a dock in New London, Connecticut. The bell was lowered 100 feet to a simulated submarine hatch. It sealed perfectly. Men climbed through. The bell was raised. Charles reported these results to the Navy. Again, they were impressed but unconvinced. They authorized construction of one diving bell for experimental use. The bell was built in 1939 and stored at a Navy facility in New Salem, Hampshire. It had never been used in an actual rescue. By 1939, Charles Momsen had spent 15 years developing rescue equipment the Navy said was unnecessary. He had been mocked by fellow officers. He had been reprimanded for insubordination. He had been passed over for promotion. But he had persisted. He believed he was right. Then, on May 23, 1939, USS Squalus sank during a test dive off the New Hampshire coast. Squalus was a new submarine. Modern. Well-built. It was conducting a test dive when a valve failed. Seawater flooded the engine room. The submarine sank stern first to the ocean floor. 240 feet deep. 26 men in the engine room died when the water rushed in. 33 men survived in the forward compartments. They sealed the watertight doors and waited. The submarine's captain sent a signal buoy to the surface. The buoy released a telephone cable. A surface ship found the buoy and established communication with the submarine. The survivors reported they had 48 hours of air. The Navy had 2 days to rescue them or they would suffocate. The Navy had never rescued a submarine crew from this depth. Standard diving equipment could only reach 150 feet. Hard hat divers could not work at 240 feet. The pressure was too great. The Navy had no plan. Then someone remembered Charles Momsen's diving bell. It was stored 20 miles away. Momsen himself was at the Washington Navy Yard. The Navy called Momsen and told him to get to New Hampshire immediately. Bring your diving bell. Momsen arrived at the rescue site 18 hours after the sinking. His diving bell arrived 6 hours later. Momsen had 24 hours to rescue 33 men from 240 feet down. He had never tested the bell at that depth. The deepest test had been 100 feet. Momsen had no idea if the bell could withstand the pressure, but 33 men were going to die if he did not try. Momsen supervised installation of the diving bell on the rescue ship Falcon. The bell was suspended from a cable and lowered into the water. A diver rowed the bell down to guide it to the submarine. The descent took 30 minutes. At 240 feet, the bell touched the submarine's hull. The diver positioned it over the escape hatch. The bell sealed to the hatch. Water was pumped out of the space between the bell and hatch. The hatch was opened. 7 submariners climbed from the submarine into the bell. The hatch was closed. The bell was raised to the surface. The first rescue trip took 2 hours. 7 men saved. 26 remaining. Momsen sent the bell down again. Second trip. 7 more men rescued. Third trip. 8 men rescued. Fourth trip. The final 11 men rescued. Total time 13 hours. All 33 survivors were brought to the surface alive. Not one man died during the rescue. Momsen's diving bell had worked perfectly at a depth 140 feet beyond its tested limit. The rescue made headlines worldwide. The New York Times called it the greatest submarine rescue in history. Momsen was promoted to commander. The Navy apologized for doubting him. They ordered immediate production of multiple diving bells for the fleet. Momsen's escape device was also mass-produced and installed on every submarine. If you want to see how Momsen's 15-cent device saved thousands of lives in World War II, and why he's called the father of submarine rescue, hit that like button right now. These forgotten innovations deserve to be shared. Subscribe if you have not already. We bring you the inventors and heroes who changed warfare with simple genius. Back to Momsen. The Squalus rescue proved Momsen had been right for 15 years. Submarines could be rescued. Submariners could escape. The Navy had been wrong to dismiss his work. But Momsen was not satisfied. The Squalus rescue had taken 13 hours. That was too long. If the submarine had less air, men would have died. Momsen wanted faster rescue capabilities. Between 1939 and 1941, Momsen improved his diving bell. He made it stronger. He made it faster to deploy. He trained Navy crews to operate it efficiently. By 1941, the Navy had 4 diving bells stationed at bases around the world. Rescue ships were equipped with the bells and trained crews. When World War II started in December 1941, the U.S. submarine force was better prepared for disasters than any submarine force in history. They had Momsen's rescue bell. They had Momsen's escape device. They had trained crews. During World War II, American submarines conducted aggressive operations against Japanese shipping. They sank over 1,000 Japanese ships. But American submarines also took losses. 52 American submarines were sunk during the war. Over 3,500 submariners died. Most sinkings were catastrophic. Direct hits from depth charges or torpedoes. The submarines were destroyed instantly. No one survived. But in several cases, submarines were damaged and sank slowly. Crews had time to attempt escape. Momsen's escape device saved hundreds of lives in these situations. The most famous escape using Momsen's device occurred in 1944 after submarine USS Tang was sunk by its own torpedo. Tang fired a torpedo at a Japanese ship. The torpedo malfunctioned and circled back. It hit Tang's stern. The submarine sank in 180 feet of water. Most of the crew died in the explosion, but 13 men survived in the forward torpedo room. They had Momsen escape devices. They flooded the torpedo room, equalized pressure, opened the hatch, and swam to the surface. 8 men made it. 5 died during the ascent from lung damage or drowning. But 8 survivors reached the surface and were rescued. Without Momsen's device, all 13 would have died. Similar escapes occurred on other submarines. USS Sculpin, USS Perch, USS Grenadier. In each case, Momsen's device gave crews a chance to escape. Not everyone survived. The device was not perfect, but it gave men a chance they would not have had otherwise. After the war, the Navy analyzed submarine losses. They concluded that Momsen's escape device had saved approximately 200 to 300 lives during World War II. That number was conservative. It only counted confirmed escapes. Many submariners used the device but were never recovered. Their bodies were never found. The actual number of lives saved was probably higher. The Navy also analyzed the Squalus rescue. They concluded that without Momsen's diving bell, all 33 men would have died. The Navy had no other equipment that could have reached them. Momsen's persistence had saved 33 lives in peacetime and hundreds more during the war. After World War II, Momsen was promoted to Vice Admiral. He became the Navy's leading expert on submarine safety and rescue. He continued improving rescue equipment. He developed deeper diving bells. He improved escape training. He established submarine escape training facilities where every submariner practiced escapes using Momsen's technique. Momsen retired from the Navy in 1955 at age 59. He had served for 40 years. He had transformed submarine safety from non-existent to world-leading. He had saved countless lives through stubborn persistence. Momsen died on May 25, 1967, at age 70. His funeral was attended by hundreds of submariners whose lives he had saved or whose training he had overseen. The Navy named a submarine rescue ship in his honor. The USNS Safeguard was commissioned in 1984 as a submarine rescue vessel. It carried advanced diving bells descended from Momsen's original design. In 2008, the Navy commissioned USS Momsen, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. The ship's motto is "We Dare," a reference to Momsen's willingness to attempt what others said was impossible. Today, every submarine in the U.S. Navy carries escape devices descended from Momsen's original 15-cent design. The devices are more sophisticated now. They have better oxygen systems and improved buoyancy control. But the basic concept is unchanged. A simple breathing device that gives submariners a chance to escape a sunken submarine. Submarine rescue procedures worldwide are based on Momsen's techniques. His diving bell concept has been adopted by every major navy. When submarines sink today, rescue forces use Momsen's methods to save crews. His legacy is measured in lives saved. What made Charles Momsen's story remarkable was his persistence. For 15 years, the Navy told him submarine rescue was unnecessary. They told him his devices were impractical. They told him to stop wasting time and resources. Momsen refused. He believed he was right. He kept working despite opposition. He tested his equipment obsessively. He refined his designs. He trained volunteers. When Squalus sank, Momsen was ready. His diving bell worked perfectly. His escape device was proven. His 15 years of rejected work saved 33 lives in 13 hours. Momsen also demonstrated the importance of disaster preparedness. The Navy did not want to plan for submarine disasters. They believed focusing on rescue planning implied submarines were unsafe. Momsen argued the opposite. Planning for disasters made submarines safer. Crews operated more confidently knowing rescue was possible. That confidence improved performance. Momsen was right. After the Squalus rescue, submarine recruitment increased. Sailors were willing to serve on submarines because they knew rescue was possible. The Navy had been wrong to resist Momsen's work. Momsen's 15-cent escape device is a masterpiece of simple design. It solved a complex problem with minimal resources. The device had 3 functions. It provided oxygen during escape. It provided buoyancy on the surface. It was cheap enough to equip every submarine. That combination of simplicity, effectiveness, and economy is rare in military equipment. Most military equipment is complex and expensive. Momsen's device was neither. It was brilliant because it was simple. Modern submarine escape systems are far more complex. They use advanced materials and electronics. But they are also more expensive and harder to maintain. Momsen's original design could be manufactured for cents and required no maintenance. That simplicity meant every submarine could carry dozens of devices. Complexity would have limited deployment. Momsen understood that simple solutions often beat complex ones. Momsen also pioneered submarine escape training. Before Momsen, submariners received no escape training. They were told escape was impossible. Momsen changed that. He established training facilities where submariners practiced escapes in controlled conditions. Every submariner made multiple practice escapes at increasing depths. This training saved lives. Submariners who had practiced escapes knew what to do when their submarine sank. They did not panic. They followed procedures. Panic kills during emergencies. Training prevents panic. Momsen understood this. His training programs became standard. Today, every submariner worldwide receives escape training based on Momsen's methods. They practice escapes in towers and tanks. They learn to control their breathing and ascent rate. They learn to stay calm under pressure. That training traces directly to Momsen's work in the 1930s. Momsen also demonstrated the value of learning from failure. The S-51 and S-4 disasters killed 73 submariners. The Navy wanted to forget those disasters. Momsen wanted to learn from them. He analyzed what went wrong. He identified problems that needed solving. He developed solutions. His diving bell and escape device directly addressed the failures that killed those men. Learning from failure is uncomfortable. Organizations prefer to move on and forget. Momsen refused. He forced the Navy to confront submarine safety issues. That confrontation saved lives. The Squalus rescue vindicated Momsen completely. For 15 years, he had been dismissed as obsessive and insubordinate. His equipment was called unnecessary. His testing was called dangerous. Then 33 men were trapped underwater, and only Momsen's equipment could save them. The Navy admitted they had been wrong. They apologized. They promoted Momsen. They mass-produced his devices. That vindication must have been satisfying. Momsen had persisted through ridicule and opposition. He had been right. The men he saved knew it. The Navy knew it. History knows it. What can we learn from Charles Momsen's story? First, persistence matters. Momsen worked for 15 years against institutional resistance. He never quit. He believed submarines could be made safer. He proved it. Second, simple solutions are often best. Momsen's escape device was brilliantly simple. A rubber vest and oxygen canister. That simplicity made it practical. Complex solutions would have been rejected as too expensive. Third, prepare for disasters before they happen. The Navy did not want to plan for submarine disasters. Momsen insisted. When disaster struck, preparation saved lives. Organizations that refuse to plan for disasters pay in lives. Fourth, test relentlessly. Momsen made over 300 practice escapes. He tested at increasing depths. He refined his technique. That testing saved his life and others' lives during real escapes. Testing reveals problems. Fix problems during testing, not during emergencies. Fifth, advocate loudly for what you believe. Momsen was called insubordinate. He kept advocating. He wrote reports. He gave demonstrations. He refused to be silenced. That advocacy eventually convinced the Navy. Quiet acceptance of bad policy kills people. Loud advocacy saves them. Charles Momsen embodied these principles. He saw a problem: submariners dying in sunken submarines. He developed solutions: a rescue bell and escape device. He tested obsessively. He advocated persistently. He succeeded. His 15-cent device saved thousands of lives. His diving bell established rescue procedures still used today. His legacy is measured in submariners who lived because Momsen refused to accept that submarines could not be saved. That refusal changed history. Today, submarine safety is taken for granted. Submarines have escape systems. Rescue forces are ready. Training is mandatory. But none of that existed before Momsen. He created an entire field: submarine rescue. He did it through stubborn persistence against institutional resistance. The Navy said rescue was impossible. Momsen said, "Watch me." He proved them wrong. 33 men rescued from 240 feet down. Hundreds more saved during World War II. Thousands more saved in the decades since. All because one stubborn lieutenant commander refused to accept that sailors had to die when submarines sank. Charles Momsen proved they did not have to die. He gave them a chance. That chance was worth everything. If this story inspired you, hit that like button right now. Every like helps us share these forgotten innovators who changed history with simple brilliance. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss these stories of persistence and genius. Drop a comment and tell us where you are watching from. Tell us what you think about Momsen's 15 years fighting the Navy to save lives. Tell us if you have ever persisted against opposition to do what you knew was right. We read every comment. Thank you for watching. Thank you for helping us preserve the memory of heroes like Charles Momsen, the man who refused to let submariners die and invented the equipment that saves them. We will see you in the next one.